Hello, I'm Zash, and welcome to episode 71 of my Senjou no Maou, or The Devil on G-String, Let's Read. Joining me, as always, is my co-reader Faith. Now, things have been going from bad to worse for our intrepid hero and her lancer, Kyousuke. They have been separated from each other, and Kyousuke has been captured by a very rapey-sounding Hashimoto. Not that... well, there is something wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with him being gay, it's just... the rapey bit is a bit creepy. But hopefully he'll manage to escape. And hopefully Usami won't be captured by Maou or his goons. Anyway, please enjoy this next episode.
I hope Kyousuke is alright. Usami Haru was concerned over the boy who had sacrificed himself to save her. She was able to escape the clutches of that angry mob thanks to him. He may put up a cold facade, but he really is a hero when backed into a corner. She wanted to contact him immediately to make sure he was safe, but for whatever reason, her calls wouldn't connect. No matter how many times she dialed his number, she never got through. In the office district, just a short walk away from the Central Boulevard, there didn't seem to be many thugs hanging around. But in their place, she spotted a man in military garb carrying an automatic weapon. Perhaps he was one of those mercenaries Yuki had spoken of. Seeing as Haru had only spotted one so far, there are probably relatively few of them in this operation. However, the man she did come across did not play games. He killed indiscriminately and without pause, never bothering to give chase. After gunning someone down, he simply continued his patrol unaffected, keeping a sharp lookout. The gears in Haru's head were ready to turn at a moment's notice. Ever since that bombing at a Moscow theater, ever since the day she lost her mother, Haru's anger and hatred towards Maou never left her for a minute. The fact that Maou had posted a professional here implies that this region is more important than Central Boulevard. Next, she simply needs to understand why. As Kyousuke mentioned, Mao's objective is the release of Samajima Toshikatsu. Presumably, the main hostage is the politician Imagawa. She also knows that Sano Corporation employees are being held captive. The terrorists likely intend to kill them to serve as a warning to the police. Will the police really accept their demands? Police jurisdiction does not include the premature release of incarcerated convicts. However, Maou must already know this. He's not the sort of man to cause this perverse uproar without even the remotest chance of success. Then again, perhaps he's using terrorism on such an unprecedented scale in order to sway the government's decision. Naturally, the police will stand by their tenets. They will not negotiate with terrorists. So then, what could be stopping the police from charging in when there have been multiple civilian casualties already? Contributing factor number 1. The majority of the rioting mob is composed of minors. Contributing factor number 2. The police have likely not secured a satisfactory insertion point. Contributing factor number 3. Imagawa's location has not been confirmed. The first contributing factor is a perfect example of Mao's pathological caution. Though Japan does occasionally see crimes committed by minors, it's still a small fraction of the juvenile delinquency of the West. This situation, however, is severe enough to warrant calling in an assault team. To top it off, the children involved have barricaded themselves in the contained area. Needless to say, the police higher-ups who are calling the shots must be scratching their heads on this one. The second contributing factor gives birth to a number of doubts. Let us assume that each of the land routes into Central Boulevard has been barricaded. Even so, is an entirely flawless barricade even truly realizable? There must be at least one weak point in the defenses. If one wanted to cut a swath through downtown, there are a number of available methods. Off the top of Haru's head, an armored vehicle could crash through a building, or explosives could blast through a pile of sandbags. Thus, the cause of hesitation would ultimately have to be Mr. Imagawa. Haru herself was not very familiar with him, but he appeared to be quite the political big shot. If the police can't pin his location down exactly, then even should they secure an insertion and extraction point, he would be killed before the special assault team could reach him. And therein lies the reason for why Maou chose to create such a wide buffer of devastation around him. Even if they did manage to break through the barricade and search aimlessly for Imagawa, the police would be face to face with the lurking mobs. Naturally, their trigger fingers would be less itchy when faced with a horde of children, especially when each one would be impossible to readily identify as civilian or bogey. Just then, Haru thought she heard Kyousuke's voice.
Come on, Usami. What are you thinking?
He's got a point, Usami thought. Really, what was she thinking? She should be devising a plan to reunite with Kyousuke as soon as possible, and maybe even escape this hell.
Let's just go home and listen to some classical music.
Honestly, she didn't want to listen to classical anymore. Kyousuke would no doubt ask her to play the violin again. She never imagined that he would be a fan of hers. She couldn't play the violin anymore. Not after that. This is all Mao's fault. The imaginary devil on her violin's G-string had robbed her of everything dear to her. I'll kill you. Haru looked up at the Sano Corporation's headquarters. She could see a black box moving up and down through a column of windows. It was a main elevator, and it was in operation. Seeing as they had closed the fire shutter, she had assumed that the higher floors were permanently blocked off. Apparently, that assumption was incorrect. But why? Of course. The terrorists intend to relocate the hostages. The police, no doubt, have their sights set on the location where the men guarding Imagawa set out their last communications. That location was the Sano building. Alright, I'll find out where they're going. Once they can confirm Imagawa's whereabouts, the police should decide to charge in. It's quite unfortunate, though, that Haru won't be able to kill Maou with her own hands.
Now, this is a surprise.
A voice shot out from behind her.
She hadn't even noticed him. If you're still wondering how I did that, maybe it's time you started studying your enemies. Maou looked down on her with his usual overconfidence. At his side was the Caucasian she had seen the other day, pointing a gun at her. Field work, Usami. You spot a rat near your base, sneak up on it, and get rid of it. Even if I were as incapable as you must think I am. My friends here are all experts at field work as well.
Maou.
I heard tell of a long-haired girl spotted in the area. So, I came here on the off chance. Lo and behold, it really is you, Usami. He spoke happily to the man at his side. Apparently, this was his way of introducing Haru. I'm delighted that you were able to survive among this landscape.
Well, this isn't exactly the first time I've been a victim of terrorism.
I suppose that's true. He spoke like he had forgotten. Unforgivable. So, what brings the hero out to these parts? I take it you're not just out for a walk?
I came to kill you, of course.
Let me guess. You came here to discover Imagawa's whereabouts.
I suppose that's top secret information.
Your bravery is commendable. He shrugged his shoulders with a touch of humor. He then indicated the entrance to the Senjou building behind her. You'll be coming with us.
What?
Why not just kill her now? The man standing next to him seemed to be thinking the same thing. He sent Maou a look of protest. sorry about this, Alan. Old habits die hard, you know that? It's immature of me, but I just can't help wanting to play with my prey a little bit before I kill them. She couldn't stand that arrogant composure. When he killed her mother, he left Haru alive as part of some sick game. Haru bore the insult and followed after Maou. She felt a chilly sensation against the back of her neck. Snow was trickling down from the black sooted sky. Megalipses. Ellipses. I was awakened by the sound of a heavy iron door closing. My head ached. After a short while, my vision came into focus.
Up yet? Sweet cakes?
Hashimoto wore a faint smile and cracked his fingers. I was in what seemed to be a basement. It was a square room and looked to be about 30 feet to a side. A stifling silence weaved together with the stagnant air of the room. There were no windows, and the only source of light was a naked bulb hanging from the ceiling. I withstood the pain and opened my mouth. Where am I?
Confinement facility.
He shrugged. There were no other captives here. The only other things I can see right now are the cigarette butts scattering the floor, and the 2 female corpses laying among them. Their clothes had been ripped apart, and their hollow eyes looked in my direction. Did you do this? My pulse was pounding so hard I could hear it. It was a clear indication of my fear for what was about to happen to me.
We're in the basement of a club. Ever heard of Yuri?
It's one of the bigger clubs in the downtown area. As I recall, it's located on the outskirts of Central Boulevard. I get it. You wait here and ambush people that are looking for a way out.
Correct. The east exit on the first floor leads to the national border.
What? Hashimoto snickered. I checked out my surroundings once more. A bottle of sake, a lighter, and an ashtray were scattered across a table near the wall. A businessman lay collapsed over it. He was dead, of course. Do you think you'll get away with all this?
Get away? From who exactly?
The police, of course. You may be minors, but if you go off and do something this insane, well, you know what's in store, right? Hashimoto just snickered again. The laugh contained a hint of pity, but it was easily dwarfed by the ridicule. How are you going to get away this time, huh? The entire area is completely surrounded by the police.
We ain't running.
What?
I told you, this is a nation, and it's our nation, so we have no reason to run.
I looked up to glare at Hashimoto.
The boss is about to demand that this area be given extraterritorial rights.
Mind translating that for me? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, you don't! It means that the currently blockaded area, along with the sky above it, will no longer be a part of Japan.
I was at a loss for words.
We'll be free from police intervention and Japanese law. Truly a country of dreams.
There was no hint of lies or deception in Hashimoto's voice as he spoke with fervor. Instead, they seemed to be filled with deep faith and conviction. They had a twist of ecstasy in them. The result was the spitting image of some crazed cultist. Do you really believe all that shit?
Fine, then let me ask you this, Azai. If someone told you that Central Boulevard would suddenly turn into a battlefield one day, would you believe them?
There was nothing I could say to that.
You know, something, Azai? My father's different from me. He was really serious about being a teacher. Vice principal is a pretty impressive position, I hear. But ever since Shiratori's prick of an old man set us up, everything went to hell. The media hounds us day and night. My mom went back to live with her parent, and my little sister's being bullied at her elementary school.
I had a similar experience myself, so I could understand his grief to a certain extent.
If you hand a gun over to a guy like me, would it really be all that strange if he finds he just might want to off somebody?
However, I couldn't sympathize with his base nature. To a kid in the prime of his youth, pride is everything. You can't let people look down on you. If someone pulls one over on you, you return the favor. If someone screws up your family, then get back at the world by screwing up everyone else's family. Mao understands that part of the human psyche rather well. Okay, but just think for a minute. There's no way you could make your own country.
Oh, we will.
First, what would you do about food? You may have enough for another week or so, but what then? Plus, if you break off relations with Japan, they're going to cut off the electricity to the area. Not to mention the fact that your guns are going to run out of ammunition eventually. When that happens, this little country of yours will be smashed into the dust.
Now we'll figure something out.
That's not an answer. You guys are just being used.
Everyone says that at first. But now we've come this far, there ain't anyone saying that anymore.
Well, yeah. At this point, they've already committed numerous crimes and offenses. They have no choice but to trust Mao now that things have come this far. I read in a book once that corrupt religions and cult leaders attempt to mold situations in which their believers can no longer turn back. Along Central Boulevard today, anyone who wasn't contributing to the violence was immediately targeted. Thus, because of the circumstances, people had to kill others, lest they risk being killed themselves. And I'm still in shock that all of this occurred amongst children. Obviously, the police are in shock too. I was overcome with a dizzy spell. The absolute cruelty of my brother's plan left me in despair. Yeah, I know. We weren't even friends at school, really.
You got that straight. Oh, speaking of which, do you know what's going on with your little friend?
Ichi?
He's laid out flat a floor up from this one. He said he'd join us, and then suddenly attacked me. I mean, please, it was so obvious what he was going to do. Fucking stupid little shrimp.
Yeah, that about sums him up. My voice was so empty, I surprised even myself. So, he's still alive?
Yeah, we were talking about putting on some kind of show after this.
He spoke with glee.
A public execution, I guess. You ever go to that website with a video of a soldier getting his head cut off in the Middle East?
I'm aware of it.
Well, we're uploading a lot of brutal shit to that internet right now. Every world is gonna fear us.
They've entirely left the realm of sanity. I steeled myself for what was to come. So, you're planning on making Aichi the victim of whatever sick bullshit you can think up?
And you too.
He nodded without a second of hesitation.
We know what we're doing is bad, but I finally realized that evil is sometimes a form of salvation.
Well, you and I may be small fries, but there's one thing I think you ought to know.
The fuck?
I will always be the bigger fry. You're just a tool to be manipulated by a greater evil known as Mao. You're not even trying to think for yourself. I thought back to my late father. A true villain is one that neither follows nor flatters anyone. A being of absolute solitude. I never really understood that until the last minute either. So, don't go running your mouth about shit you think you've realized. Hashimoto suddenly came flying at me. The anger on his face was on a different level than before. His foot left the ground with a sharp force. I tried to block it with my hand, but my body wouldn't move like I wanted it to. By the time my brain had time to recognize the dull pain, I had already been knocked against the wall. I was still conscious, but I couldn't breathe.
Try saying that again!
He delivered a vicious blow to my abdomen. I was unable to form words. Only a moan leaked out as I writhed in agony.
Get up!
I slowly tried to get up. My body felt extremely heavy. I had trouble breathing, like there was something stuck in the back of my throat. I finally managed to lift myself up by planting my hands and feet on the floor. Hashimoto took a step backwards. Fuck. I was planning on charging at him. I released my hands from the ground and managed to make it to my feet. I need to stand up, move, and get out of here to meet up with Usami as soon as possible.
You rich, spoiled little brat.
Hashimoto pushed me down and delivered another kick to my side. Small fry. Small fry. I continued jeering at him. Maybe the reason he's flying off the handle so badly is because he just doesn't like my face.
Come on, stand up!
Oh, I'll stand up. I'll stand up as many times as it takes. But the floor around me was shaky, so I couldn't find a steady foothold. I sprawled forward on the ground, then pushed backwards against my lower body. I planted my feet on the ground, straightened out my knees, and finally rose to my feet. I used both legs to support my upper body. Then, this time it was a punch. As my backside hit the floor once again, I stared up arrogantly at this little small fry. He was the one losing his cool. I chuckled a bit. The swaying of the floor grew more severe, and my ears started to hurt from the lack of oxygen.
You know what? I've decided what I'm gonna do with you. I think I'll burn you at the stake.
Hashimoto looked down at me. I meant to insult him as best I could. Small fry. But I just end up blurting out that pathetic line. After glaring down at me for a while, Hashimoto left. I heard the door shut, and I was left in silence. It took quite some time, but fighting against the pain and chills, I finally managed to get myself back up. After staggering to my feet, I headed for the door, muttering to myself, "This is nothing. Compared to the shit Gonzo put me through, this has no chance of forcing me into submission." I grabbed the doorknob. Open! Of course, there was no way it was going to open. Damn it. Usami. Megalipses. Ellipses.
The elevator shuttled silently upwards towards its destination. Inside, just as silently, Maou watched Haru with crossed arms. Haru was similarly watching him, waiting for an opening to attack. Maou was clearly getting a kick out of the situation. He had left Haru unrestrained, and was now simply watching her. His grin seemed to scoff, "If you've got something up your sleeve, show me." The elevator doors opened. Just beyond the dark, narrow passage, the faded rooftop awaited her.
Kyousuke's here in Central Boulevard too, isn't he?
What about it? An overcast sky loomed far above her. Nevertheless, the numerous lights on the street below shone with enough brilliance to pierce the thick clouds of smoke.
I hear this is where you met Kyousuke.
Maou spoke as if ruminating on the distant past. He carried no weapons. He simply stood arrogantly before Haru. "What are you playing at, Maou?"
I was merely setting the proper stage for your death.
He said with a smirk.
I would have preferred the drainage channel, but all the entrances are tragically outside the current barricaded area.
Haru shot Maou an angry, defiant gaze. Maou continued on.
Long ago, I used to play these video games with Kyousuke. They were called role-playing games, apparently. Sometimes our sessions would continue late into the night.
What about it?
The final battle between the hero and the demon lord was always in some poignant, relevant place, much like this one.
His eyes held a content, distant gleam.
The hero would grow stronger and use his newfound power to destroy the evil demon lord. However, will you live up to those fairy tales?
Ellipses.
For these past 10 years, revenge was my everything. Its objects included the nation itself, Izai Gonzo, and a variety of other concepts and people. But the centerpiece of my hatred has been and always will be Usami.
Likewise, Maou. You ruined my entire life.
So, you intend to kill me? Even though I'm Kyousuke's brother?
Haru's expression tensed as hesitation attacked her.
Wouldn't you feel sorry for Kyousuke? He loved me quite dearly, you know. Imagine how devastated he would be if I died.
Are you pleading for your life?
Not at all.
He replied, shaking his head.
I merely wanted to reassure you that your intentions are evil as well.
I already know that. Mao's eyes flooded with enough hatred to nearly push them out of their sockets.
Listen, Usami. Every last man lives in a world where he is always righteous. Every last man will stay there until he rots in his grave.
She knows that. Even as they speak, Haru's heart is ablaze in an attempt to justify her desire for Mao's destruction. Whenever one succumbs to violence, one turns to that beloved weakness known as justification. Whether the victim be a heavily armed terrorist or a helpless little girl, once a person has killed someone, he or she will always seek righteousness in the act.
They say that humans are inherently fickle by nature, and that no emotion will last forever. Even I had moments during which I felt I should forgive you. The obvious notion that parents are parents and children are children nagged at my conscience.
Haru shared that particular experience. There had been sleepless nights in her life, nights where she considered releasing this asinine revenge in favor of a normal life.
But in the end, hatred won out. My father once said that Usami will never learn his lesson unless the girl Haru is killed.
The girl Haru was drawn to speak up. I too was unable to give up my pursuit. Every day, every time I opened my violin case, I was reminded of my mother's regret. Maou nodded in understanding. It was the most profound nod thus far. Perhaps he was seeking some backward sort of reprieve. Just as he has hated Haru, he wanted Haru to hate him in return. In any case, Haru herself felt a twinge of relief upon hearing of Mao's hatred towards her. There was no rest for the wicked on this chain of revenge.
Wouldn't you agree, Usami, that hate, of all emotions, has the most viable longevity? As evidence, war has been omnipresent during the history of mankind.
Haru didn't know whether she agreed or not. Well, I suppose there is one other. Maou grinned. He knew what Haru was going to say. Hatred was not the only thing ruling Haru's heart. You could say without any hesitation that the past 10 years have been divided between her love for Kyousuke and her hatred for Maou.
Kyousuke, huh?
Haru was shocked. For the first time, she saw something akin to warmth gleaming in Mao's eyes. If only for a brief moment, he returned to his role as a worrying older brother. It didn't take long, however, for Maou to regain his casual smirk.
There's no need to worry. After I kill you, I'll be sending Kyousuke to meet you shortly. You can remain together forever.
It was a hackneyed speech. What a sad man, she thought. Semajima Kyohei was a man of extraordinary talent and initiative, yet he had gone on to devote it entirely to a life of revenge. He would follow his own beliefs and stay true to his morality as the devil to the very end.
All right.
Maou pulled a gun from his suit.
Since you said you've come to kill me, I trust you have another fun little trick prepared for me.
He scraped the ground as he stepped forward. She took a step backwards to keep a proper distance. It was obvious that a head-to-head contest of physical strength would not be in her favor. What now? What does Haru have in this situation that could provide her victory over Maou? Hand-to-hand was out of the question. She had no weapons. Perhaps there was something on the rooftop that could be used to distract Mao's attention. No, Maou would be extremely familiar with the entire building by now.
I'd say that despite the lack of poetic locale, wringing your neck is still the way to go.
Yes, this arrogance is Mao's greatest weakness. He could pull the trigger or call for his comrades at any time, yet he chooses to play with his adversary. Even so, it would still be difficult to escape the situation. Maou had cracked a tongue-in-cheek joke about setting the stage for her death, but the rooftop he brought her to was indeed a death trap with no escape. The bloodlust he exuded made it clear to Haru that this was no game. In contrast, Haru was completely unprepared. Haru was pressed backwards. Each step she took, Maou closed in on her equally.
You're good with heights, aren't you?
Haru had at last been cornered to the rooftop fence. She was unable to think of a means of counterattack. Urged on by gunpoint, she moved along the fence. Is this the end? Just then she heard a roaring above her. It originated from a helicopter. Probably belonged to a news station. There were no signs that they had noticed the commotion, nor was there any guarantee that they would come save her if they did. Nevertheless, it was enough to distract Maou for a moment. He looked to the sky. Now? No, wait. It was an invitation. As if to confirm her suspicions, Maou spoke.
What's wrong? Wasn't that your big chance?
Haru searched for a means of escape. If they fought now, no one would be coming to save her this time. But the rooftop had no cover of any sort, and Maou was much faster than Haru. The only other escape was the other side of the fence. A gust of wind tore across the rooftop. Haru just barely dodged Mao's grasp as she set foot on the edge of the rooftop. An air current from below pressed against her back.
Well, I suppose falling to your death from the Senjou building wouldn't be so bad either.
Maou pointed the gun at her. His finger was on the trigger. The chill running down her back was not a result of the cold surge of air from the distant street below her. She gripped the fence tightly, but craned her neck round to look down. Haru felt that she had just discovered her last hope.
Farewell. Say hello to your mother for me.
Haru twisted around to avoid the bullet. The bullet Maou fired did not hit its mark. However... What? She tripped over herself. She was knocked into the air. This would be the second time she was in this situation. Last time, when she was but a child, she was saved by a young boy. Kyousuke. She frantically reached out, struggling desperately to grab onto something. All she found was snow. It melted fruitlessly in her hands. She screamed in a voice she could barely recognize as her own, praying for any possible help. Die! All other noise vanished from her ears. Haru was hit with the reality that she was falling. She looked at Maou. He was not laughing anymore. He stood with a solemn expression, like he was mourning the dead. Haru's line of sight switched from Mao's face to the endless dark sky. Her extended right arm managed to nab the edge of the rooftop. One arm alone, though, was insufficient to support her weight. Ellipses. Ellipses.
Looks like things are going smoothly. After seeing Usami fall from the building, I came to check on the hostages. After all, we should be getting a call from the police soon. I take out my cell phone. I chose to use a cell phone for my negotiations with the police in order to make it harder for them to ascertain the location of the hostages. The police will know where I'm calling from. But for my last call, I was in the streets of the business district. For my next call, I will choose yet another, different location. It's almost time, Mr. Superintendent.
Yeah. Actually, it turns out that no decision has been reached yet.
What a shame. I guess my sincerity wasn't enough to get through to you. I surveyed the room. None of the hostages seemed to show any sign of resistance. They were all slumped against the wall, looking gloomy. Well, no, not all. There was one who looked up sprightly. He looked to be a young employee. He wore a bandage around his shoulder. His features seemed indicative of one that grew up in a nice environment, but his eyes spoke of a strong will and the intent to break through this dilemma. I see. He must have been the one who saved those kids earlier.
So, I was hoping we could talk this out.
I believe I made it clear that there would be no extensions on time.
Yes, you did. But you know how this works as well as I do, don't you?
He's a pro, all right.
8 hours just isn't realistic. It took an extraordinary amount of time just to gather the Prime Minister and his cabinet. And you're asking them to hand down such a heavy decision in the remaining time? It's obviously impossible.
And what would you have me do?
Wait for another 5 hours.
If I do, will something good happen?
It is the police's opinion that a decision will be reached within that time.
I clicked my tongue. Wouldn't you call that slothful lethargy a crime in and of itself?
Wait, don't be too hasty.
I will now proceed to kill one hostage. I'll take care to ensure that you hear the gunfire.
Just calm down, will you? What good would killing someone do you? Yes, it's true that we couldn't meet your demands in the allotted time, but you're a pro, aren't you?
What about it?
Just give us a little more time. Is a little delay going to ruin your plan? Surely one such as you would not confront us with such flimsy management.
A magnificent negotiation trick. Appeal to the culprit's pride and force them to think objectively for a moment. Perhaps I really should have used Tokita Yuki to take her father out of the picture. It is precisely because we are pros that we are punctual about time. I pointed my gun without hesitation. I pulled the trigger. A woman's brain splashed against the wall. The heavy atmosphere among the hostages grew a step heavier. The room was enveloped in screams. They were followed by yelling of the female employee's name, and finally wrapped up by subdued crying. Were you able to hear that? Superintendent Tokita was apparently too mortified to respond. Contact me again in 1 hour. There are 10 hostages left. Surely you get my drift? I will kill one hostage every hour. I hung up the phone. Just then, someone yelled out at me. Hey! It was the young employee from before. I was curious about what he was going to contribute, but unfortunately... Kill me next! Why would you do that to a poor, defenseless woman? He was filled with indignation, and there were tears in his eyes. I just returned a faint smile and left. Killing a courageous man like that has little effect. The most effective screams will always be the ones that come from a woman's lips. Megalipses. Ellipses. Naturally, the door Hashimoto used to leave was locked from the outside. I guess that means that I'm now locked in as a captive. How fitting for someone who is awaiting his public execution. Someone had confiscated the cell phone from my pocket. I can't call for help. And besides, Usami and Aichi are the ones who really need help right now. Think. I look about the room. The door is the only exit. There isn't even a ventilation shaft. No wonder the room is so murky. I hug the wall as I head for some junk in the corner. A bunch of comics and porno mags were tossed around in a pile. Great. Nothing convenient, like a rock drill, or something to break through the wall. A loaded machine gun would have been great, too. Now think, damn it! How do I get out of here? How do I escape and save Usami and Aichi? How can I get that door open? I scolded myself for getting chicken-hearted. I'm not a righteous superhero or anything like that. Looking back at the kind of life I led, I can't expect to be saved by friends or anything of that sort. Now, think. I am the son of Azai Gonzo. My life may not have been decorated with good deeds or medals, but it also wasn't so easy as to let some small fry like Hashimoto do me in. Gonzo would roll over in his grave if he could see how pathetic I was right now. The cremation and burial are today, after all. His soul is still in this world. Wait, cremation? I exploded in a grin. Watch this, Gonzo. I'll make my escape a death-defying show, just for you. It should provide some entertainment during your flight to hell. I gathered up the magazines and the wooden table in the center of the room. I arranged the items in a lattice pattern, tearing or breaking them up as needed. I used anything that seemed burnable. Then I lit the pile of paper with the lighter I found on the table. Now, burn! I gradually added tinder until the fire grew in force. The material was dry, so all I had to do was watch it burn. The flames popped and crackled. The first signs of black smoke began to coat the ceiling. However, having no place to go, the smoke started creeping back down to the floor. The temperature of the room rose at a dash, and I could feel the heat against my face. Black smoke gradually filled the room as it swirled about, searching for an exit. More. Burn, choke, thicken. And then, when that door opens, blow out in a gust. I coughed at the oppressive offense to my lungs. I couldn't even keep my eyes open. The air was starting to thin out. As the force of the fire weakened, the smoke grew even thicker. I crouched near the door. I beat at the door furiously as I fought for every breath. Hashimoto said that Aichi is being held on the floor above this one. That naturally implies that there's a guard or two up there. They'll come rushing in to see what all the fuss is. And the second that door opens, I'll slaughter the lot of them. I continued to pound. I strained against the door to listen for footsteps. There was no one coming. Why? Water started pouring from my shut eyes. Get the hell over here! Why aren't they coming to see what's wrong? I beat at the door with all my strength. My fear manifested as sweat rolling down my back. What if there's no one out there? What a comedic way to die. The fire behind me was waning. and the crackling started to weaken and die down. I put my face to the bottom of the door in order to get the bit of air seeping through. I can't afford to stop pounding, but my right arm won't move the way I want it to. I almost black out a few times. I can't give up. If I were to die here... I made a fist so tight my fingernails dug into my skin. What would happen to Usami? For what reason would Izai Gonzo have died? Dad, that's right, you died protecting me, Dad. I don't give a shit whether that's true or not. I'll be damned if I'm going to join you just yet. My body, covered in smoke, refused to continue operation, but my will adamantly refused to die. I wasn't even myself anymore. I had just become an animal, desperately beating at the door. I had to teach them a lesson. I had to teach them that pissing on me means pissing on Izai Gonzo. I burned with hatred to fuel my anger. My memory was starting to get fuzzy. That was when I first realized the fresh air coming through my nose. My brain cells suddenly reactivated, and my consciousness began to clear. It felt like my body belonged to someone else. The right hand I was using to beat at the door was now beating against air. Smoke billowed out in gusts. The door was gone. It was finally open. I heard a jumble of footsteps. Met with fresh oxygen, the fire revived with crackling sparks. I prepared to pounce. I heard a flurry of shouting. Water! Put it out! It was the chirping of my prey. After standing up and checking the direction of the smoke, I subdued my reason. It had no place in the actions that would follow. I charged with all my strength. I saw 2 hyenas. They flinched at the sight of me. I swung my arm and sank my fist into their faces. I then dashed to the side of them, not even waiting for a scream. I made a beeline for the stairs. The kid who tried to grab my arm from behind was met with a sharp overhead kick. A dull throbbing graced my arms and legs on multiple occasions. Each time it did so, a scream accompanied it. I'm not particularly strong. These boys' resolves were just particularly weak. Brutality is the very element of a wounded beast. Once again, dark smoke ran along the ceiling in search for an exit. But this time, I chased after it. I raced the smoke to the first floor. I bumped into someone, and it turned into a struggle. You! My body instantly reacted to his voice. The air in my lungs fueled my burning hatred. Unabated coughs, unabated tears, unabated groans leaked out of us. The ceiling and the floor twisted and blurred. Headache, nausea, upset stomach, lack of oxygen. Burns on my throat, burns on my organs, chills, fever, infection, internal bleeding. My body used delirium to beg me for mercy as I infringed upon the small fry before me. If you want to kill me, then go ahead and try it! I'm not sure how many times I hit Hashimoto after that. But one thing is certain. To the bitter end, the one motivating force of mankind is, and always will be, anger.